Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video, and we have it, the class update that we were promised. This is one that you do not want to miss out on. This is going to completely reshape the landscape of the classes and how they're going to perform in the game as a whole. And if you want to make sure you're staying up to date with changes like this, that you always know when the floor is going to be pulled out from under your feet, then do make sure to hit the subscribe button, because I am doing my best to be an excellent resource for that reason. So let's get started here. The first major talking point is tanks and tank tuning specifically. This upper half is definitely more oriented towards PvE, but will have implications in PvP. They're basically going to be making tanks take 10% more damage, and this is because they don't want tanks to be soloing bosses in Mythic Plus scenarios. I've seen it happen a couple times in the MDI. I've seen Mez do it in my dungeon groups in Legion as a Blood DK. It has happened where like the healer doesn't even have to do anything. So this tuning pass is all about trying to get healers something to do with their healing, which is likely going to shift the meta of healers as well if effective throughput becomes more valuable for healers that maybe don't have a lot of damage reduction cooldown. So a lot could change just as a result of this. Now, will 10% across the board do that massive sweep? Kind of wait and see, but that is the main objective of these changes here, is to make tanks all take 10% more damage. That means in PvP as well, which of course makes the most sense there, but as well as making sense in PvE. Now, for damage dealing specializations, they've got a numerous amount of tuning changes as well. A lot of it is targeted towards passive healing. If you're a PvP player, you love seeing reductions in passive healing, but even in PvE, again, a lot of healers don't feel valuable because, well, the Warlock drain life's to full and I'm just better off doing damage. Why am I even here? I should be a DPS spec, right? There's just been this increase of healing, influx of healing patch after patch after patch, which I think has damaged the value of healers in PvE, and then completely imbalanced PvP, right? To where we get dampening matches that last way too long. So bringing down this passive healing is a win for the game as a whole, which is why we're going to be covering what classes exactly are getting this nerfed. Demon Hunter, the first one that stands out on the post. The Hunt now will heal you for 10 to 20% of the damage dealt to the target over 20 seconds, down from 25 to 50%. That is a big nerf to the Hunt's healing overall. Charred Warblades is now only going to heal you for 3% of the fire damage dealt, down from 5%. Fixed an issue that was intentionally permitting Fodder to the Flame's heal effect to crit. Seems like there was a lot of bugs around Fodder to the Flame. Haste procs, and then you could also get a crit heal with it. And then Essence break damage has been reduced by 8% for just AoE cleave damage, but this will have some implications in PvP. Makes a lot of sense with Demon Hunter Havoc, at least its performance overall. And there are more PvP changes after this where Demon Hunter gets hit a second time, but this all makes a lot of sense in the game as a whole. For Shadow Priest, we're seeing Vampiric Touch healing being reduced by 30%, or down to 30% of the damage, down from 50%. Devouring Plague as well, reduced to 30% of the damage dealt, down from 50%. I'm sure a lot of Shadow Priests were thinking out there like, we're gonna slip by. They're not gonna notice us. We're gonna just go through the shadows and not be seen. But you have been seen and you have been nerfed. For Rogue, we're seeing Leeching Poison healing reduced to 5% from 10%. For Assassination Rogues, you're seeing Poison Bomb's chance to trigger reduced to 4 to 8% per combo point from 5 to 10. For Outlaw, we're seeing the damage of Dispatch and Pistol Shot being increased from 5% by 5% and 6%. So Outlaw Rogue, nice to see some buffs for you. Subtlety Rogue, you're going to be seeing Black Powder doing reduced damage by 5%. They fixed a bug that caused secret techniques to incorrectly interact with Cold Blood. Curious to see what this interaction was actually enabling you to do. For Warlocks, again, more healing nerfs. Fell Synergy now causes Soul Leech to heal you for 15% of the absorption it grants, down from 25%. Soul Leech now grants a shield of up to 5% of the maximum health, down from 10%. And Demon Skin now increases Soul Leech absorption up to 10% of the maximum health, down from 15%. So some of the classes right off the rip that I was looking at specifically are Warlocks and Shadow Priests, Rogue healing to some extent, although maybe Subtlety more in PvP than it is in PvE because we don't see any PvE change for it, but I really like the direction of it overall. For Fury Warrior, in the game as a whole, we're seeing Gushing Wound damage and healing reduced by 10%, Bloodthirst damage increased by 1%, and Bloodbath damage increased by 1%. I mean, okay, 1% damage increase. I don't know if that's a big deal. It's more or less that the consistent healing is being brought down for Fury. Now in PvE, you don't have things like Battle Trance, so the healing for Fury and PvE is already at a lower state than it would be for PvP. So that's probably why we don't see too many changes for Fury in terms of its adjustments for PvE. But when we get into PvP specifically, this is like the holy grail of changes that I feel like a lot of veteran PvP players have been dying to see for spans of expansions or patches, especially with how much readiness that got hit with this. Like it just gets hits right away. In addition to the above game-wide tank changes, we felt that certain tank specializations have been overperforming in PvP. Alongside this, there were several DPS specializations that had self-healing higher than we were comfortable with. Most of the listed changes listed below are meant to make adjustments to address these concerns. So Demon Hunters, what's going on with you? What are they going to target for you specifically? First of all, we're seeing a lot of changes targeted toward their sigils, because now you're able to get the sigils that Vengeance had. And it was really powerful in PvP, being able to get an extensively long crowd control chain, stun, imprison into Sigil of Fear. So we see Sigil of Misery PvP duration reduced to 4 seconds from 5. Concentrated Sigils duration increased value reduced by 50% PvP. Precise Sigils duration increased value reduced by 50% PvP. And extended Sigils duration increased value reduced by 50% PvP. This is all to try and keep those CC chains under more control for Havoc, because it definitely would have been dominating. Fodder to the Flame heal effect has been reduced by 40% in PvP combat. The Lay on Hands effect is not going to crit anymore. Doesn't proc based off of haste, and now will heal 40% less. This was the exact ability that needed to be targeted to kind of bring Demon Hunter healing in line with other classes. And now for Havoc as well, consuming a soul heal effect when consuming a demon soul will be reduced by 60% in PvP combat. This is even more of a nerf towards that, because you'd pick up the soul after killing the demon. And then essence break damage has been reduced by 20% in PvP combat on top of that essence break, that nerf that we saw above as well. So this complete, like, it's so much harder because Demon Hunter was clearly above everybody else, right? Clearly. Now, I don't really know. It's really tough to say, which is good. That's where you'd want it to be. And I'm excited to see how this plays out and get more data and get that relayed to you guys with some tier list updates, as well as some top 10s, kind of like specs and classes, because this completely mixes up everything. For Death Knight, for Blood specifically, Blood for Blood is going to increase the damage of your heart strike by 30% down from 60, and Shattering Bone damage is only going to be reduced by 25% in PvP combat. I like that they're targeting all the tank specs, right? Because I think all of them could have had sneaky things that could have popped up. And these are talents that we're definitely going to have some like stacking of percent modifiers that could be problematic. And now Guardian Druids, this is why I'm saying I'm not biased. These make sense. Moonfire damage is going to be reduced by 20% for Guardian Druids. Thrash damage is going to be reduced by 20% for Guardian Druids. Brambles damage has been reduced by 50%. And Rage of the Sleepers reflect damage has been reduced by 50%. After the Wildfire healing effect has also been reduced by 40%. Sharpened Claws is only going to increase the damage of Thrash and Swipe from 10% down from 25%. And Tooth and Claw is only going to increase the damage of Maul by 20% down from 40% in PvP combat. Guardian Druid is still going to have infinite frenzied regens, so it's probably still going to never die, is the only thing that I've noticed from this. But you're not going to see Guardian Druids topping the damage meter anymore in Battlegrounds. It's really unlikely. But you're probably going to still be a really annoying damage sponge, is the only thing I'm noting here, especially because Incarnation or Berserk makes it so Frenzied Regen has no cooldown. That's one of the main things that is enabling you to heal for so much. But this is making them not really viable, at least in competitive play, like completely not viable in competitive play, but you're probably still annoying in world PvP. For Prop Paladins, this actually, I was starting to lean towards Prop Paladin being the best class in the game. So I'm very happy that they're targeting it with some nerfs preemptively going into this, because there wasn't a lot of testing for it, because Prop Paladins get their own solo queue format. So you didn't see any of them, but I actually think Prop Paladin might have been the most overpowered class in the game. Word of Glory is going to be reduced by 30% for Prop Paladin only. Light of the Titans healing is going to be reduced by 40%. And Guardian of Forgotten Queen's cooldown is increased to 5 minutes. There are so many talents that synergize that reduce this cooldown to, it just seemed like, oh, there's a queen, you get a queen, there's a queen, you get a queen. Like, oh my God, finally. Maybe there's not going to be an indefinite amount of queens going out from Prop Paladin, so I do really like this. For Fire Mage, Combustion is no longer going to be dispellable due to the fact that Fire Mage is underperforming so much at the moment. I think, this was something that they made in the past that made sense for the era. No, it's not really making any sense, so going back on this, I think is going to be a good change for Fire. Is it going to make you more viable? possibly with all these healing nerfs, right? It's possible that you're going to be a little bit stronger because you might be able to cut through all of the healing that these classes have now. For Rogue, Soothing Darkness heal is going to be reduced by 50% in PvP combat. Really good change. This was doing a tremendous amount of healing on Subtlety Rogue. Do not let Peekaboo's propaganda make you think that Subtlety Rogue was bad. He knows it's good. He's memeing and he knows it's good. And these types of things are a really good change to make the game better as a whole. And then Hemotoxin is only going to be reducing healing effects by 35% down from 40. Assassination had 2 charges of Shiv, which means they basically have 2 sharpened blades. So targeting that specifically, I think, is a good way of trying to alleviate some of the advantages that Assassination gets now by having 2 charges of Shiv. 5% is honestly pretty light, especially when we consider what happened to Fury Warrior in a second. For Subtlety Rogue, we're also seeing the Rotten damage bonus for Backstab and Shadow Strike reduced to 30% from 50% in PvP combat due to the fact that Shadow Strike was hitting too hard, leaving minimum room for counterplay opponents, taking too much damage in a single stun. I'm sure we've seen a lot of memes of Subtlety Rogues 100-0ing people, so it's not really surprising to see them get nerfed. But what is nice is that they're targeting everybody, because I'm sure there were a lot of Death Knights that were kind of grimacing that they got hit so hard in that last round of changes, and then there's like, is that it? Are we just going to be left out here? But bringing all of the DPS specs a bit more in line in terms of their overall healing, I think is going to be the appropriate step. And then from this point, go back and look at it when the season is live and be like, okay, what's going on now? Is the game more fun as a result of this? Do we need to unwind any of this, or maybe even go further on some of it and then go from there? But this is a great kind of like starting point overall for adjusting all of the passive healing, making consistent damage more relevant, and doing exactly what PvP players have been, hoping for such a long time. Now, Fury Warrior, you're probably dead. And I'm very happy that I didn't make a tier list, because I was going to put Fury Warrior on S tier. I've been leveling my Fury Warrior. He's going arms now. Fury Warrior is dead. And there's one change in here specifically that I really don't like. Some of them are really good, but one of them I don't like, and that's the one that I really want to talk about. Bloodthirst now is going to heal you for 2% of your health, down from 3%. Really good change, because we increased health overall, so Bloodthirst was really obnoxious. Slaughterhouse is now only going to decrease healing taken by 3% per stack, down from 5%. But now it's going to stack up to 12 times, up from 8, and the duration is increased to 9 seconds from 6. However, Slaughterhouse duration is no longer refreshed when adding stacks. So with all of this math juggling, I feel like it's probably going to be close to impossible to get high stacks consistently on a target, which means your Mortal Wounds effect is way less effective. That was the main reason to bring a Fury Warrior. I think targeting all the healing on Fury Warrior made a lot of sense. It's doing way too much. It's basically a Guardian Druid, combined with the changes that we saw above and here, but I am very concerned. I didn't really mind it, stacking slower and taking longer. So if you CC the warrior and they lose their stacks, it's really detrimental. I think that made a lot of sense, but the not refreshing probably going to kill this spec. Prot Warrior, shield charge damage reduced by 25% in PvP combat, and Booming Voices is now only going to increase your damage by 10%, down from 20%. So again, just covering their bases on all of the tank specs. Brewmaster and Vengeance Demon Hunters, you guys might have snuck by here. You might have something that's crazy good, and I don't know, and nobody's ever tried, but you might have something because you didn't get any nerfs on this. So we'll have to wait and see there. But I would say overall that this has been an insane round of tuning. Like, they've targeted most of the right things. I think for Death Knight players, and even not Death Knight players, would have preferred that they looked at Spell Warden more than Death Strike. Active healing is generally better for the game than passive healing that's RNG reliant, and Spell Warden was more negatively impacting casters, which I don't think Death Knights needed any more of an advantage to, as opposed to Death Strike healing is now making them even more vulnerable to the melee attackers they were already vulnerable to in the first place. So, going back on that, adjusting where the healing is being nerfed rather than the active healing, timing your Death Strike versus the passive Spell Warden, I think would be a good rewind. Just to kind of like backpedal a bit, when I was talking about Death Knights and everything being in a good spot, I do actually think that would be a nice prompt as well. But either way, this was a fantastic read through. Really good to see that we're moving in a direction in making healers more valuable, likely going to increase the diversity of healers in general in all content of the game. Hopefully we're not seeing tanks solo any more bosses due to the extraordinary levels of healing or damage taken that they're able to prevent. Really good tuning pass. Again, just a couple of those that stood out that I'd like to be looked at, because Fury Warrior is kind of dead. And then Death Knight, like I said. Other than that, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please leave a thumbs up and comment down below with your thoughts. What are you expecting? Is this going to shift your area of play? Are you going to play a new class? Are you going to stick to it with what you got and just see what happens? Because who really knows? This is literally like put all the classes in a hat and then roll them out, because I think where everything is going to land at this point, I think Hunter is probably going to be really good. Because now maybe every other class is, closer to their level of defense and they're doing a lot of damage. That's just one thing that I would note right now, but I will get more content out to start trying to predict more in detail. Other than that, thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.